In the beginning, Nibiru was a lush planet, teeming with life and vegetation. Nibiru orbits the Sun once every 3,600 years. This is called one Shar. Volcanic eruptions on Nibiru envelop the planet with a thick protective atmosphere, keeping the heat trapped on the planet during its long cold outer orbit and shielding it from the Sun's heat during its inner close orbit. Unlike the other planets, its rotation was elongated, while the other planets and the hammered bracelet we call the asteroid belt were more circular in their solar orbits. As time went on and the people of Nibiru advanced, great astronomers and scientists emerged, even savants of great wisdom. Each star or orbit, the conditions on Nibiru grew worse. Drought and crop loss were studied, and it was determined that the orbit was growing closer to the Sun on the inner courses. Their atmosphere was growing thinner because of declining volcanic emissions.
Try to explain why there are now warm sides and cold sides to winter storms. This is historically unprecedented. Over and over, the same paid-off meteorologists try to explain away the incredibly anomalous jet stream behavior. The job of mainstream media now is to make the completely unnatural seem natural to the public. Until recently, many have accepted the lies, but thankfully, that's starting to change. Now, even some of the most recognized experts are admitting on the record that they cannot explain all the anomalies occurring around the globe in regard to the weather. For many in the eastern U.S., the whole world seems a frozen wasteland. Those in the mainstream have done their best to fortify this belief, though it couldn't be further from the truth overall. True, we are now in for polar vortex 3. Any that take the time to research global maps on temperature deviations from normal will take note of the extreme glaring cold zone that is only in parts of Canada and the eastern U.S. Again and again and again, over and over and over. These are the areas that are being most heavily geoengineered toward the cold side. Temperatures in parts of these regions of North America have this year been colder than the North Pole and even colder than Mars. Does this seem just a bit off, considering we just had the warmest January on record in Alaska? For the entire planet, January 2014 was the fourth warmest on record. This was the case in spite of the fact that everywhere we try to examine temperature readings, the quote official temperatures are now routinely being underreported by as much as 5 degrees. Let me say that again. In regions where we have tried to verify the quote official temperatures for the day, we have seen the official temperatures underreported by as much as 5 degrees. What does this mean? It means that our planet is much warmer than we are being told, and official agencies are quite literally lying about this fact. The climate engineers have kept the parade of engineered snowstorms and manipulated jet stream cooldowns trained over the same locations over and over in order to create maximum media hype and maximum confusion in the population. Should it really be colder in parts of the lower 48 than the North Pole? Should the temperatures in many locations fluctuate some 50 degrees or more in a 24-hour period for the daily highs? Just to state for the record and to jog people's memories, 2012 was by far the warmest year ever recorded in the lower 48. How did 2013 end up with so many cold records in some parts of the U.S.? These cold records are in spite of the fact that November 2013 was the warmest November ever recorded on planet Earth. If you don't believe me, verify everything I'm saying. It's all on the record. Also for the record, Earth just had its 37th consecutive year of above average global temperatures. Yet another record to take note of. We just passed the 346th consecutive month of above average temperatures on planet Earth. Let's keep going on this. The Sochi Olympics were the warmest ever recorded. But what about down under? Is it cool down there? Well, no. 2013 was the warmest year ever recorded in Australia, by far. It was so hot that the meteorological maps had to change their color codings to reflect the never-before-seen temperatures. Could all these facts be true? How can this be, given the fact that the Weather Channel Theater paints a constant picture of a frozen planet? Consider this. That's what they're paid to do. That's the picture the climate engineers want the American population to buy into. The weather makers hammer the same highly populated regions of the U.S. again and again and again. They engineer snowstorm after snowstorm with artificially chemically nucleated snow, which, thankfully, many people have now taken note of. Headlines of cold, that's what the climate engineers want. That's what they're so focused on. The most populated regions of the U.S. that get hit over and over. That's the story the totally controlled mainstream media puts out. Does the media cover the rest of the planet that is constantly at far above normal temperatures? No, almost never. Does the media mention the fact that as of February 15, 2014, the Arctic ice cap is again at all-time record lows? Absolutely no coverage of this. What about the massive methane hydrate releases now occurring in the Arctic, which have all the potential to end life on Earth many times over? Not a word about this dire situation. And what about the brand new cloud types that were only first identified in 2009? Didn't anyone look up before that time? I'm speaking of undulatus asperatus, a type of cloud not noted before 2009. Again, how can this be? On the 25th of February, undulatus asperatus clouds were noted in Georgia. Amazingly, new types of clouds have been identified in recent years, many new types. Doesn't anyone question this? How are we to believe that these, quote, new clouds were always there and no one noticed them before? Clearly, there are many atmospheric anomalies that are now the results of the unbelievably engineered climate. How has the corporate media altered reality on other aspects of weather reporting? Here in the western U.S., the mainstream media cheerleaders now jump up and down if the high Sierras get 8 to 10 inches of snow, as if that's a really big storm. In years past, such a small amount of snow could be considered a dusting. In previous decades, the Sierras would commonly get storms that measured snow in feet, not inches. Californians are fed lie after lie after lie from the media about the drought being a part of a, quote, natural cycle. I would ask, what's natural about a global climate modification program that completely alters the Earth's natural systems? What is natural about the drought-creating effect of these programs? What is natural about having our skies sprayed full of highly toxic metal particulates day in and day out? Does the EPA report any of this contamination? Of course not. What's natural about having our jet stream manipulated with the dozens of HAARP radio frequency transmitters around the globe? Our planet's life support systems are completely unraveling, and climate engineering is rapidly worsening this process. All are needed in the fight to raise awareness. We need everyone to do their part. If we can awaken a critical mass of the public to the all-out assault they are being exposed to, the geoengineering dominoes will begin to fall. This is Dane Wigington with geoengineeringwatch.org.
Weather that we're having around the world in New York, these incredible cold spells that we have had. Who had ever heard of the vortex in New York, right, before that weird weather? The incredible heat that Australia has suffered, the floods in the UK, and you name it, it goes on and on and on and on. There's no country that has been exempted. These very strange extreme weather events are going to continue, both in their frequency and in their severity. It's not that climate change is going to be here in the future. We are experiencing climate change.
This Arctic blast could see America reach its coldest temperatures in decades. Millions of people across a huge swathe of the country are being advised to hunker down while the so-called polar vortex does its worst. Minnesota could be hardest hit, with wind chills set to make it feel like an astonishing minus 50 Celsius. The polar plunge has struck unusually far south. In Oklahoma, the rotating pool of freezing air is producing rarely seen temperatures.
The inside of the New York to Washington, D.C. train iced up.
Try opening the window in Chicago and you'll get this. 35 below zero right in your living room. It's so cold, Lake Michigan looks more like a hot tub. The water outside Chicago warmer than the frigid air, and ice already forming along the banks.
Images of water turning to ice before it reaches the bottom. Parts of Niagara Falls have become frozen.
South as Texas and here in Elk City, Oklahoma, heavy snow is falling. This is unusual even for winter.
This weather combination that we're seeing right now with all of the snow and the cold is unlike anything that we've seen in decades. And I can't emphasize that enough. The cold really scares me. And as such, that we will have temperatures that are potentially deadly or certainly life-altering temperatures.
Hundreds of flights continue to be cancelled, leaving passengers stranded. While on the coast, not far away, seawater, which flooded some communities during the storms, has now frozen over, marooning people there too.
Severe, pervasive and irreversible. Words used in a new UN report about the likely impact of global warming. Amid extreme weather worldwide, experts say the health, economic prospects and food and water sources of billions of people are at stake. It's everything from droughts to rising sea levels.
We're not in an era where climate change is some kind of a future hypothetical. We live in a world where impacts of climate change are widespread and consequential. We see impacts from the equators to the poles and from the coast to the mountains. There's no question that we live in a world that's already altered by climate change.
Powerful waves have continued to pound Europe's Atlantic coastline. 2 people are now feared dead in the French holiday resort of Biarritz after they were swept out to sea. The town's famous promenade was battered during the night, leaving many businesses to pick up the pieces on Tuesday morning. The surge wasn't isolated to France. A large stretch of Europe's Atlantic coastline was hit by high tides, including Portugal and the Spanish region of Galicia. At least 1 person is now known to have died in Spain, with 2 others still unaccounted for. In Portugal, this amateur footage showed one man's desperate attempt to save his car, just managing to escape in the nick of time. Elsewhere, near the capital Lisbon, the swell was so bad, huge pools of foam like this started washing up along the shore.
Time to go.
An earthquake of around 7 magnitude has struck China's far western region of Xinjiang.
It's the earthquake that shook central New Zealand, including the capital, Wellington. The minute-long 6.3 magnitude rolling.
Thousands of residents woke with a bang this morning after a series of earthquakes rocked the state. Many have told of their fear and confusion as the shockwaves rumbled through the suburbs.
Tremors and shakes were felt right across Metro Adelaide.
We have very few this close to Adelaide that are of this magnitude, so it is more unusual.
South Carolina and Georgia got a bit of a shake last night. An earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 4.1 shook homes and rattled residents' nerves.
It's the second largest earthquake to ever hit the state.
A 6.9 earthquake hitting off the coast of Eureka.
Already 4 aftershocks. Chile has ordered an evacuation of parts of its northern coast following an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.0 jolted an area 35 kilometres north.
Oh, an earthquake.
Big earthquake right now.
Big earthquake. That's
a really strong shaker right now.
Very big.
I still feel it. Are you still feeling it?
Yeah.
Steady
It's
shaking
still
there.
shaking.
My hands are shaking.
A 4.4 magnitude earthquake has shaken Los Angeles. This is the second quake to hit the state in a week. This is the strongest quake to hit the city since the last aftershocks of the 1994 Northbridge quake. The United States Geological Survey said there could be a 5% chance of another strong quake within the next 3 days. Local residents in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick woke up to a bit of a surprise when a giant fireball illuminated Canada's skies early on Tuesday morning. CCTV captured the incredible moment when a bright burst of light lit up the sky. The fireball, which is thought to be a meteorite, could also be seen from Nova Scotia, where eyewitnesses said they saw bright lights in the sky and heard a loud noise like thunder at around 5 a.m. local time.
Alpha 6412, where do you want it?
Not real often.
There's a combined fire and everything's gone. The houses are gone.
Are there any injuries?
Yes, there's people yelling for help.
A desperate call to the emergency services as a deadly tide of mud and rock crushed everything in its path. Houses were swept off their foundations, trees keeled over, and people were sucked into the sea of mud like quicksand.
24 people are confirmed dead and 170 others are still missing. It's believed a small earthquake may have triggered the tragedy.
It's like a war zone up there. People finding children, people finding babies.
And while the task of finding bodies is already so grim, some have had the even more unimaginable trauma of finding only partial remains.
The slide hit with such force that oftentimes the rescuers are not recovering full intact victims.
Massive turnout by the emergency services personnel going through their districts, checking. A lot of rolling going on down here. My family lives down here in Orange County. They said it was quite violent. It went on for quite a while, so a pretty good shaker coming through.
A 5.1 magnitude earthquake shook Los Angeles, triggering a rock slide.
This is actually the second noticeable earthquake that this area has had in just the past 2 weeks. And since the earthquake hit, there have been more than 100 aftershocks, including one that was 3.4 just a short time ago.
The ground shook just after 9 Friday night.
We might be experiencing, I should say, an earthquake here.
And seismologists are particularly worried about this quake because they think this fault may be reawakening. We haven't heard from this particular fault, they don't think, in several decades. The reason they really don't want to see this fault wake up again, it runs right through downtown LA.
Yeah, the second largest city in the country, Ryan.
This footage shows a rare tornado that ripped through Northern California, damaging dozens of homes, while debris smashed windows and ripped holes in walls, and left residents of the city of Roseville in shock over the unusual event.
0.8 magnitude quake hit the northern part of Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. It shook the ground at about 5:30 this morning, California time. It was felt in towns along the Montana-Wyoming border, including West Yellowstone.
This morning, tsunami sirens blaring. Chaos as an 8.2 magnitude earthquake rocks the coast of Chile, driving almost 1 million people to evacuate their homes. Fires burning after a 6-foot tsunami followed the quake.
The shockwaves were felt hundreds of miles away, shaking buildings as far away as Bolivia and Peru.
People are dead and many more injured.
For the past 7 days, more than 1,700 earthquakes worldwide. We do still have tsunami advisories.
The earthquake even triggered microscopic seismic measurements in New York Central Park. There have already been more than 24 aftershocks. In just the past 2 weeks, hundreds of earthquakes have been shaking Chile's far northern coast.
Just about 24 hours ago, there has been another strong earthquake off northern Chile, and the emergency office there has ordered preventive evacuation of the coastline in the north of the country. There's a quake magnitude 7.4 offshore.
Latest official report on climate change that says it is underway, and we are already
already suffering the effects. Here in Australia, air and ocean temperatures are increasing, with waters off our east coast amongst the fastest warming in the world, and deadly algal blooms and rainfall is expected to decline across southern New South Wales and Victoria. We should have 5 seasons in Australia, adding a second spring, basically shortening autumn and winter by 2 months.
The dangers of climate change are set to get much worse.
Australia can expect more intense rain and drought, greater bushfire danger and worse cyclones.
Warming across every state, every territory and every season in Australia.
It's the superstorms bringing nations to their knees. The searing sun turning the earth into a tinderbox, leaving the ground cracked by drought, and the crashing waves of rising seas. But it seems this extreme weather isn't random. A UN report says this is climate change, and things are only going to get worse.
We have reasons to believe that if the extent of climate change continues to increase, then the very social stability of human systems could be at stake.
Today's report is somber reading. Rising temperatures and changing weather could mean more crops fail, so food is scarce. Wildlife will face extinction. Rising sea levels could make water undrinkable, with flooding forcing millions from their homes. And the threat of war will rise as people fight for resources.
Okay, we just found this out here in the middle of the lake.
What the fuck is it?
So foggy.
Alright, I'll touch it.
Okay, touch it.
Oh, did you see it?
Slimy?
Yeah!
You need a stick or something.
So, what the fuck is it? Touch it.
Gross. Gross.
Oh, weird.
What if it's like a disease?
What if it's some of those clams you were talking about, trying to find some shells?
Might be. You don't just see shit like this, man. Let's get a close-up on it.
It melted the ice.
I know, dude. That's what's weird about it. Maybe it was aliens, dude. It is alien eggs.
The attitude, mentality amongst those who at the higher level, the highest levels of Vatican administration and Vatican geopolitics know that now knowledge of what's going on in space and what's approaching us could be of great import in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Carefully and well-chosen words, Father. Thank you. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin.
There's another planet in the solar system that they call Nibiru that was captured and moves like a comet in a 3,600-year orbit. Our own astronomers know it's out there. They call it Planet X. It has gravitational effects on the outer planets. They can't find it because it's so far out. Ancient Sumerians and what they had to say about it are correct. And what they say is that there's another planet in our solar system that was captured by our solar system as the solar system was forming.
Sumerian records indicate that they began their counting not from the sun, but from a planet on the outside of the solar system.
But most surprising was the inclusion of one more large planet as the 12th member of our solar system.
The launch of Pioneer 10 in 1972 ushers in the era of deep space exploration. The craft journeys beyond the outer known planets, sending back data that is used to seek a possible 10th planet.
14 August 1978, which was just about 6 weeks after we discovered the fact that Pluto has a satellite. Once you have a satellite for a planet, you can determine how heavy it is. Turns out Pluto is very much smaller and lighter weight than we had thought, which meant that Pluto has no influence, no appreciable influence on the motions of the planets Uranus and Neptune. At that point, we voiced the hypothesis that this means that there is at least one yet to be discovered planet in the outer reaches of the solar system.
Over the past 2 decades, physicists have joined astronomers in the search for the mysterious Planet X.
One of the things we did in 1978, having made this prediction that there was an additional planet, 10th or 12th, depending on your point of view, we sort of put our money where our mouth was, as it were, and we went out and we started looking for this thing. We've been able to refine the search area somewhat, get it rather narrowed down. We do our predictions based on the observed anomalies in Uranus and Neptune. We actually are currently looking down in the region of Centaurus, which is just south of the constellation Libra. But if it is in the kind of orbit that we describe here, it would have to be a planet that would have a mass something like 3 to 5 times the mass of the Earth. This would put it intermediate between the gaseous planets like Uranus and Neptune and the terrestrial planets that we have in the inner part of the solar system. So if this planet turns out to be in a 3,600-year orbit, then its mass will be correspondingly larger. This one here is a map of the solar system as we know it. The inner planets, this is the orbit of planet Pluto. And this here is the orbit that I have proposed for the 10th planet. And here's where we think it is right about now in its orbit.
If Planet X exists, we are not alone.
Are elected and you learned that the government knew aliens had visited Earth and the public didn't know, would you want the public, would you ensure the public found out?
Well, it depends on what these aliens were like and whether they were Democrats or Republicans.
So you have to go further than that.
Do you believe in life on other planets?
Oh yes, there's not much question at all, but there's life throughout the universe. We're not alone in the universe at all.
You're convinced that we're not alone in the universe?
Oh, I know for sure we're not alone in the universe. Now, have we been able to identify for sure where the other planets are? No, we have not. Certainly not in our solar system. But they've identified quite a number of planets now that very likely could be life-bearing planets. And I happen to be privileged enough to have be in on the fact that we have been visited on this planet. And the UFO phenomenon is real, although it's been covered up by our governments for quite a long time.
Whoa! Hang on a minute. Well, this is big. Whoa! All of this is quite a shock to me.
Well, I'm sorry you haven't been reading the papers recently. It's starting to open up quite a bit.
So you're telling me? Well, there's a lot of information to take on board. Hang on a minute. I mean, listen. I've heard crazy UFO nuts tell me this kind of thing before. I've never had Dr. Ed Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, a respected scientist in his own right, announced to me that we've been visited by aliens from other planets, and that they definitely are out there. There's no debating it.
Well, that's the first time you've ever talked to me, or I've told you about it before.
So you believe in the whole deal?
There's more nonsense out there about this than there is real knowledge, but it is a real phenomenon, and there's quite a few of us. It's been well covered up by all of our governments for the last 60 years or so, but slowly it leaks out, and some of us are privileged to have been briefed on some of it. I happen to have grown up in I don't even know whether you know this place, Roswell, New Mexico, where presumably the Roswell incident of 1947 took place, and I'm quite knowledgeable of the lore there, and since I grew up there. But I've also been in military circles and intelligence circles that knows beneath the surface of what has been public knowledge that, yes, we have been visited.
So, and be serious, you're not going to go, I was just pulling your leg about that. That's not true. I'm just wondering if I've stumbled upon astronaut humour, and in a couple of minutes you're going to go, I was only pulling your leg.
No, I won't say that.
Wow. So what? So you've been briefed on the fact that we've been visited.
Well, I haven't briefed is one word for it. I have been involved in much of this work. Now, it's not my main work. It's not my main interest. But I have been deeply involved in certain committees and certain research programs with very credible scientists and very intelligence people that do know the real inside story. And I am not hesitant to talk about it.
What is the real inside story?
Well, I've just been telling you. We have been visited.
Are we in regular contact, or was it a one-off crash, or...?
Well, no, there's quite a bit of contact going on. I can't tell you because I don't know all the extent of it. I don't know all the inside details because that isn't my really main interest. But the fact that we have been visited, the Roswell crash was real, and a number of other contacts have been real and ongoing, is pretty well known to those of us who have been briefed and been close to the subject matter.
So why is it being covered up then? Why is it that it's not mainstream?
Well, the reason for that goes back to the main instance really started taking place after World War II, when in the United States, at least, I can't speak for the European governments or the South American governments, all of whom have recently started opening their files. And it's been open. This is starting to open up, and just read the internet or look at some of the press, international press. You'll start to get the stories that are coming out now. But
I've had people on the show telling me that that the governments are mounting up towards disclosure, towards saying that this is the case. Do you think it will be the case that there will be an actual disclosure on this, maybe this year, that the governments will come out?
I don't know whether it'll be this year in the United States, but certainly we've already had it in the last few years from the Belgian government, the French government, the Brazilian government, the Mexican government. They've opened their files and admitted that they had the files.
Right, okay, let me get my head together. Okay, listen, here's what I know. I've had people on the show talking about the fact that the Catholic Church has said belief in life on other planets doesn't compromise your Catholicism.
Of course, that just happened recently.
Yeah.
In association with a major release, I believe, of the British government, some of the British government files. There weren't their deepest files, but there were some files released.
Yeah. What's happening is at the moment, over the next 4 years, all of the UFO files here in the UK are being released. Do you think it's the case that we are ramping up towards maybe the UK admitting?
Well, I can't say how fast this is going to happen, but certainly the public awareness of it is increasing. The public acceptance is increasing. The amount of misinformation and covert and attempts to cover up seem to be decreasing. I think we're headed toward real disclosure, and some very serious organizations moving in that direction.
You've had a long time to think about this. What do you think the impact will be on the world when it is finally mainstream news that there are alien beings that live outside this planet?
Well, I think at this point it's probably ho-hum, so what's new? I think that certainly in the United States, there's well over 70% of the people now accept this as fact, although they do not know all the correct story. They do know that there has been, or accept the fact that there has been visitation and that there's UFOs in the skies all the time that are very likely alien craft. Now, not all of them are. I suspect some of them are homegrown. I suspect that in the last 60 years or so, that there has been some back engineering and the creation of this type of equipment, but it's not nearly as sophisticated yet as what the apparent visitors have.
So, as part of this, as part of you knowing about this, and also going public with it, are you worried for your own safety with this kind of stuff, or are you convinced that the
no, I think those days are gone. That used to be a concern among the people on the inside, but I don't think they're knocking anybody off for that anymore, or doing drastic things to them.
What do you think the intent of the aliens is? Is it hostile or peaceful?
No. It's not hostile. It's pretty obvious that if it were hostile, we'd have been gone by now.
Really? I mean, what?
We could have been.
Wow.
We had no defense, if that's what their real intent was.
And what are we talking? What do they look like? Are we talking like, the traditional sort of?
You've seen some of the pictures. The pictures that I know of, some of them are these little people that look strange to us. As far as I know, from my contacts that have had contact, that's pretty accurate.
Wow. Do you think other people who were involved in the moon landings know about this?
Some of them do. But again, it's like other people. If you're interested enough to dig into it and want to know about it, you can know about it.
Because, man, listen, I don't want. I know you're a busy guy, and I know there's other people who need.
Yeah, this phone that they're not leaving me alone with this other phone that's ringing all the time, and I'm by myself here.
This has been easily one of the most significant conversations of my life. Unbelievable. I want to thank you for joining us.
You man.
And Dr. Ed Mitchell, listen, you're a friend of the show, if you want to accept that friendship, wow, what an incredible...
That's what's weird about it. Maybe it's aliens, dude. It is alien eggs.
Oh. That'd be
cool. What do you think, Jordan?
I don't know. I don't know what to think. I want to touch it again.
It's so foggy out.
Oh, weird. Ew.
I wonder if it's getting even... Yeah, you can't even see out there. What do you think they were drinking? Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah. Huh. That's fucking weird. Look at that thing, dude.
I know. I wonder if we can find another one.
Bottom line is the stargates are opening. Even the clouds, the National Oceanographic Administration is saying something's happening. The clouds, the normal clouds that used to be at a specific height, are lowering and they're dissipating. That's true. Whatever God made is being taken away. the chemtrails, they're terraforming the Earth, but that's another story. How do the aliens fit in? Just do a 5-minute, 10-minute just thing, because I don't think people understand that when the Vatican made its, you're going to love the word, quantum shift to now embrace what they usually teach are demons. And by the way, I was in contact with one of the most prominent sorcerers, an elderly gentleman for the Vatican, so I know from his position what he sees taking place. But so this is a quantum change. Chris dealt with Jerusalem being a critical part of the move, but also how do the aliens fit in? And I'm not trying to take away from Petrus Romanus, but my guess is that they're kissing cousins, okay?
Okay, well, I'll go there then. I just want people to know that when they read the book Petrus Romanus, it's not going to be about aliens.
No, I understand that. I understand that, and I'm not trying to take away from it. When we go to the questions, we'll go specifically to that, but I think, look, we only got 15 minutes before we go to the questions, okay? And okay. I'm getting emails asking me to ask you that, because there are people that have listened to you, are now being, introduced to Chris, but have listened to me, and they're saying, okay, I'm starting to get it now. So if you just want to take 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking.
All right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so let me just jump really far forward and just say this. The rabbit hole goes very deep, right?
Yep.
And I will do published work on this probably this year, in which I'm going to show the world interdisciplinary works from the Vatican, in which they are explaining how mankind could soon be evangelized, that's their word, during contact with spiritual aliens. I know that sounds extraordinary. If people want to email me, I'm glad to send them the actual publications from some of the highest placed astronomers inside the Vatican, in which they are talking about us soon being greeted by extraterrestrial civilizations, and how we will need to respect those intelligences who are going to have, according to these documents from the Vatican, they're going to have, let's say, a higher level of understanding of God. And the reason is because they're not fallen, according to this theology. We're fallen. They're not. They're closer to God than we are. And therefore, they're going to have a non-terrestrial intelligence that offers better understanding of the relationship between God and the whole of creation. And that, and by the way, let me just quote this document from the Vatican. This quote, this would not immediately oblige the Christian to renounce his own faith in God simply on the basis of the reception of new, unexpected information of a religious character from extraterrestrial civilizations, but such a renunciation could come soon after as the new religious content originating from outside the earth is confirmed as reasonable and credible. Once the trustworthiness of the information has been verified, let me stop for a moment in this quote and ask if anybody can explain to me how it could be verified. How would you verify an extraterrestrial message? This really kind of sets me aside. Anyway, the believer would have to reconcile such new information with the truth that he or she already knows and believes on the basis of the revelation of the one and triune God, conducting a re-reading of the gospel inclusive of the new data, end quote. So how this information is going to be confirmed as reliable is beyond me. How this more complete ET gospel is going to de-emphasize or significantly modify our understanding of salvation through Jesus Christ, this is something that's also beyond me. But you have Vatican observatory directors from Christopher Corbally, for instance, in his article, What If There Were Other Inhabited Worlds, concluding that Jesus simply might not remain the only word of salvation. That's his words. Quote, I would try to explore the alien by letting it be what it is without rushing for a classification category, not even presuming two genders, Corbally said. And then he drops this bombshell, quote, while Christ is the first and last word, the Alpha and Omega spoken to humanity, he is not necessarily the only word spoken to the universe. For the word spoken to us does not seem to exclude an equivalent word spoken to aliens. They too could have had their Logos event, whatever that event might have been. It does not have to be a repeated death and resurrection. If we allow God more imagination than some religious thinkers, i.e., by the way, let me insert here, Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, Chris Putnam, et al., some religious thinkers seem to have, for God as omnipotent is not restricted to one form of language, the human, end quote. So what we have are very high-ranking spokespersons for the Vatican who, in recent years, including 2011, and we'll see what they say in 2012, are offering language acknowledging, first of all, the likelihood of extraterrestrial intelligence, and secondly, a dramatic role that ET's introduction to human civilization is going to play in regard to altering established creeds about anthropology, philosophy, religion, redemption, but specifically a rereading of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And by the way, this could be consequential to the very near future. So is that kind of what you wanted me to say, Steve?
Absolutely. And Chris, I think this is critical too, because, you know, from your perspective of writing, you know, co-authoring and doing all your investigation, I'd like you to address that too, if you wouldn't mind, in 5 minutes. You know, it won't hurt us to take an extra 5 minutes. And again, you guys, I'm not trying to assign, but we've just been on almost for 3 hours, and where'd the time go, you know?
That's what they all say about Omega Man Radio.
Yep.
So, Steve, were you asking me about my opinion on the alien question?
I'm asking you about the change in the theology of basically the Catholic hierarchy and in relationship to the alien. Basically, what they're undermining, if the basic Bible is there's no name given under heaven at which a man can be saved. So I want your take on that, because again, you know, you are a man who gets in and delves into things. And so, you know, please address that issue.
Well, I'll tell you, what Tom just said is very disturbing. I mean, anybody that's talking about changing the gospel, I mean, that, you know, the Apostle Paul said in Galatians, if I or an angel from heaven preach another gospel to you, let them be accursed. So, I mean, you know, biblically, there's absolutely no way we should accept anything like what he was just talking about. You know, I think it's really kind of strange the way the Vatican has been talking about, you know, that's a subject that I follow and I'm interested in. It's also one that's really hard to parse, because there's so much bad information, and, you know, there's so many people that hoax UFO things and things like that it's really hard, you know, to find out what's real. But I follow the subject very, very closely. One of the things that, you know, in the research for this book that, you know, that I was really shocked to discover was, you know, how the Marian apparition kind of fits in to Catholic theology. And, you know, that is one way that I can see some kind of intersection perhaps with UFOs. And it might be another thing that, you know, you were mentioning earlier, you were talking about Islam, and, you know, and we're also talking about this third temple thing. Now, you know, one of the things that I think is a live possibility is, you know, we're talking about, you know, a religion of Antichrist in Jerusalem and a third temple, and somehow a one-world religion, you know, is what's predicted. Now, what could possibly unite Judaism, Catholicism, and Islam under one temple? I mean, that seems literally impossible with the way things are today. But if you had something come in from outside, like an alien presence, or something like that, that says, here we are, and preaches this peaceful new gospel that Tom was mentioning there, I could see how that might unite all the world religions under this new thing. That's a live possibility. It's going to take something that powerful. Now, the apparition is making these kind of statements, though. I mean, I did a whole chapter on the Marian apparition in the book, and in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, the apparition's appearing and calling itself Our Lady of the Nations, and it's talking about uniting the world. Okay, and we look at the prophecies in the book of Revelation, and we see that Revelation 17 is talking about this one world religion all coming together. And what could do that? It's interesting that the Muslims also venerate Mary. Okay, and that seems to be an intersection between these two, classically opposing faiths that could actually bring them together. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out, but it could actually intersect with this thing that Tom's talking about, with the Vatican hinting at alien presences. Now, it's going to take something external and something really huge to get the world's attention to unite everybody under one leadership and one faith. And, I think that is something that we can't exclude, because it seems like possibly that is the strong delusion that the Apostle Paul talked about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely. Hey, Chris, one thing you might factor into, I think is fascinating, Fatima, the visions of Fatima, which is obviously a city in Portugal, but what is Muhammad's daughter's name?
Yeah.
Right.
So I made this statement, you guys, and of course, obviously my fans didn't appreciate it 15 years ago, but I said I can literally see how that's going to merge together, because look, you've got the whole concept, you've got the Islamic, and boy, I wish some of these generals in our Pentagon would get their acts together, because they don't understand the theology, the ideology of Ahmadinejad, when he believes that if it's his exact words were, if 50 million Iranians have to be martyred to bring on the Imam Mahdi, then so be it. Well, now you've got everybody working together, so I think it's fascinating, okay? Just that I don't believe there are any coincidences. And remember, you quoted Galatians a minute ago, and what's neat, Chris, about that, that's the only time I see Paul saying something twice. He says, let him be accursed. Again I say unto you. Remember that?
Yeah, he does.
That double, if you will, in the mouth, 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. But that doesn't happen that much in either the Old or New Testament. And when it does, I mean, it's like God saying, listen, I have esteemed my word above my name, and he's putting his hallmark on it. So I just want to throw that in, because obviously, look, there are seducing spirits. There are people that literally believe, they sit down in a seance, call up the spirit of Uncle George. It's not Uncle George. The Bible teaches give a man once die and once a judgment, but it's a familiar spirit, a spirit that is familiar with them. So now, Tom, and I think that, boy, I wish we could do another show on Stargate, you guys, because here's the thing. You, Tom, made that statement, and the gates of hell will not prevail. Until you said that to me, it wasn't time for me to embrace that, and that was at that exact moment so many years ago, and now all we see is so many attempts to open the gates. By the way, there are 72 gates. There are 72 stargates. There are 72 goetic demon gates. There are 72 ionospheric heaters like HARP. We're seeing all the 72, and for the record, there are 72 fusion centers in the United States, okay? The combination of all the intelligence gathering and law enforcement, 72. That number is throughout. So I think, Chris, the point that you're bringing up is absolutely critical for the people listening tonight. And look, every time I do a talk radio program, and bless you both for coming on, and we'll take the questions or whatever in a few minutes, but I know this. I know, what can I say to the people? And this is how I get to the bottom line, you guys. It may sound not the right way to say it, but if I could say to the people of God, and I knew that today was my last night, what would I tell them? That's what I try and bring into a conversation like this. And Tom, that's why I took you to the bottom line, okay? Sometimes as researchers, I mean,
Gentlemen, excuse me 1 second, please. Folks, we're going into the 4th hour to hear it.
Well, I think it's critical that if this is the last thing, we have to bring people to the lateness of the hour. I think we've lived in the indefinite prophetic long, and now we're in the it's happening now. So Tom, it's not, listen, if the guy croaks, forgive me, Ratzinger gets knocked off, murdered, assassinated, I mean, this thing can come so quick, and I think that we don't set time, but we can look at the events, and the fact that you guys wrote the book at this time, and all the headlines are basically, you were ahead of the headlines, that has to tell me that the time clock is punched, and we're on accelerated events being fulfilled right before our eyes. Hey, Bruce, let's take a break now, and then that'll be our last break before the end of the show.
Okay, Jill.
Now, an exoplanet is simply a planet outside our solar system. And to put this recent discovery in context, I thought it would be good to review the history of the discovery of exoplanets so far. The first discovery of an exoplanet was in 1992, so really not that long ago, probably within the lifetime of most of the viewers of this video. Now, this planet was discovered around a pulsar. The first discovery of a planet around a star, much like our own, was only 3 years later, in 1995. Most of the planets discovered since then were what we call hot Jupiters. In other words, they are gas giants which circulate very close to their parent star, which of course makes them rather hot, hence hot Jupiters. Out of the other ones, mostly were also gas giants. However, in 2011, so only about 2 years before this video, we discovered the first Earth-sized planet. To think about all this, before 1992, we didn't know if there were any other planets outside our solar system. In other words, we did not know whether or not we would ever discover another world, let alone a habitable one.
If there is one thing that defines our current political era, it is the unprecedented crackdown on government whistleblowers. If the Bush administration's invocation of the little-used state secrets privilege to silence those exposing corruption is taken as the beginning point of this era, we have seen a steady progression throughout the past decade, culminating in Obama's unprecedented war on whistleblowers. As we have explored previously on the Eye-Opener, the Obama DOJ has been relentless in its prosecution of those seeking to shine the light on government fraud, abuse, and criminality. In his first 5 years in office alone, he has charged 8 whistleblowers under the Espionage Act of 1917, more than all other presidents combined. And for those brave souls who do stand up to government abuse and manage to survive the seemingly inevitable court battles and legal challenges, the toll on their career and personal finances is just as severe. Take Thomas Drake, the NSA whistleblower who was himself charged under the Espionage Act and eventually convicted of a misdemeanor charge. Stripped of his security clearance and blacklisted in Washington, Drake has been reduced to working at the Apple Store, where, according to reports, he once served Attorney General Eric Holder as he went shopping for an iPhone. Or take Richard Barlow, the CIA intelligence analyst who blew the whistle on the high-ranking government officials who were tipping off nuclear proliferation suspects about FBI stings and helping them to ship important nuclear weapons technology to Pakistan. He was fired from a position at the DoD after raising concerns about how his reports on Pakistan's nuclear capabilities were being altered by his higher-ups. Despite being called one of the most brilliant analysts I've ever seen by the State Department Inspector General and being vindicated in a 1997 IG ruling that restored his security clearance, his career was scuttled and his family torn apart by a systematic campaign to smear his name and disrupt his marriage. The campaign worked. Barlow was unable to continue working as an analyst, his marriage ended in divorce, and in 2005 he was tracked down by researchers working on the story of the AQ-Con network to a motorhome in Montana, where he was living with his 2 dogs. Sadly, these stories are not the exception in the annals of modern-day whistleblowers. They are the almost universal rule. In fact, as Sibel Edmonds has demonstrated from her own personal experience, whistleblower organizations are actively sought out and bought off by the influential corporate foundations almost as soon as they appear. In a 2011 interview on Global Research TV, she explained her own experience forming the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition to bring together whistleblowers in their own independent organization.
And when we did that, initially, it was very interesting. We were approached by people connected to various foundations, the Soros foundations, the Hewlett-Packard foundations. They came and they said, well, what you're doing is great. This will bring lots of publicity, all these whistleblowers banding together, but you need to do it more professionally, like Pogo does. And these are the same people who've been funding Pogo and Gap. You need to have a PR person in-house. Sibel, you are not a PR person. You have no idea what PR is. And I didn't really, at the time I didn't. Oh, you need to have analysts. You need to have board of directors, board of advisors. I said, well, we are each other's advisors. We have gone through the experience. And interestingly, none of these organizations have any whistleblowers in their board of directors, board of advisors. They are whistleblowers organizations without any really whistleblowers within their organizations. And then you need to do fundraising so you can have office, because if you have raised your voice this much without having these elements, imagine how much more you can do, how much more power you can have with the Congress. It all sounded good, but very quickly I realized that these money that these carrots that they were dangling before our nose, these foundations, came with a bunch of strings and attachments. Because as I was talking with these people, with foundations, I was adding more whistleblowers. And in one case, one whistleblower from Clinton previous administration joined the coalition who had blown the whistle on Al Gore and some narcotics-related issue case within the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA. When I added this particular whistleblower, and he's still there on our list, these foundation people came and they said, why are you adding the Clinton administration whistleblower? Right now we are focused on Bush administration. This is distraction, and you should just limit to all these current wrongdoings and don't get into all the Clinton stuff. And basically this was just one example of many.
Why are the heathen and sheathen so afraid of Nibiru? Could Mizmor Dawit Bel Lisane Ge'ez? Does this give us a clear indication? Right? What says the planet of the crossing? Right? The planet of the cross, the finding of the true cross. Well, something very interesting I noticed right here, and this is in this particular Dursan, right? Dursan. So I'm going to give it to you right here. I want to give it to you straight, people. They're afraid of Nibiru because it represents God and the throne of God. Now, you see this word right here? This is Imenberu. Now, the whole verse, Sikre Sehabo Lewelda Hayal Imenberu, where Bitzaho is Kalemot. Right, now this key word right here, right, Imenberu. Now go through Nibiru, right, in Ge'ez or in Ethiopic. Check that video out. I basically talk about this. But I'm giving it to you right here from the Kedase Mariam, or Mariam's Kadush, as they say in the modern Hebrew, or Kedase. Here, this says this right here. Let me actually bring this up. Let me just put this right here and bring this up right here. Now, here this is the Amharic, so this will give us a Targum. And here we're at Meto Haya Sebat, or verse 127. It says Hayal weldin fikar kazufanu sabo iskamotim adareso. Basically, and he reached until death, being pulled down from his throne, right? Because of because of love, right? Hayal Weldon, the powerful son, or the god. Hayal breaks down to El, or Chel, in the ancient Afro-Semitic, or the root of the Hebrew. And you thought Hebrew was, it is the language of angels, right? But the Ge'ez is the language of God. So Hayal Weldin Fikar Kazufanu. That's the key word there. Zufanu. So Zufanu, right? Let's see if we can bring this up side by side right here. Right? Is this particular, so when this is worn down, would correspond to the ka, but basically in or from, right? From Niberu. Right? From Niberu. Fikar. Because of love, God came down from his throne. And now in judgment, he is bringing his throne near. So, does the Mezmur Dawit Belisane Ge'ez give us a clear indication?
What the fuck is that?
I don't know, but that's creepy. But maybe it's a nuclear bomb, dude. How do you do it?
What the fuck? It's so creepy.
The Vatican has a very, very great deal of power. We've talked about it. They have, whether they admit it or not, a great deal of political power all around the world. One of the things that they did fairly recently was they muscled, and I do intend to use that word, they muscled their way onto a mountain in Arizona, Mount Graham, and they built an observatory on Mount Graham in connection with an Arizona university. However, the Vatican has the larger part of the control of this observatory, looking at deep space things.
That's right.
Now, why would they have done that, Father? Because the mentality amongst those who, at the higher level, the highest levels of Vatican administration and Vatican geopolitics, know that now knowledge of what's going on in space and what's approaching us could be of great import in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Carefully and well-chosen words, Father. Thank you. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin.
There's another planet in the solar system that they called Nibiru that was captured and moves like a comet in a 3,600-year orbit.
Может ли небо упасть на Землю? Вопрос уже не актуальный. Прогрессивное человечество ждет более грандиозного события – падения на Землю другой планеты. Конечно, не в прямом смысле слова, но планета Нибиру подлетит к нам так близко, что последствия могут быть катастрофическими. Дело в том, что Нибиру, или как еще ее называют планета X, гораздо крупнее Земли, а значит и ее гравитационное поле гораздо сильнее. Его разрушительное влияние мы почувствуем в конце 2012 года, когда сближение будет максимальным. Как следствие, изменение наклона нашей планеты, а соответственно и полюсов, глобальное похолодание там, где сейчас тепло, и очередной всемирный потоп. 2/3 населения нашей планеты попросту погибнет. Согласно одной из теорий, Нибиру – это планета богов. В древних текстах их еще называли Анунаки, то есть сошедшие с небес.
Раз в 3600 лет она якобы появляется, приближается к Солнечной системе, к Земле.
Согласно некоторым расчетам, к 2011 году темную планету будет видно даже невооруженным глазом, а 21 декабря 2012 года Нибиру пролетит мимо Земли и засияет на нашем небосклоне яркой красной звездой, словно второе Солнце. Кстати, по случайному ли совпадению или нет, но именно в этот день заканчивает...
Про неї знали ще стародавні шумери. Про неї знає і НАСА. Та на уроках астрономії ви не почуєте про неї ані слова. Колись вона вже була тут. Існування невідомої планети забороняють говорити вголос. Нібіру. Ліпше запам'ятати назву цього світила, бо вона наближається. У 72-му році Джозеф Брейді з Каліфорнійського університету помітив, що якась невідома планета викликає гравітаційне безладдя орбіти комети Галлея. Розрахунки астронома показали, що вона в 5 разів масивніша за Землю. Та цю інформацію швидко прикрили, пославшись на похибки дослідницького апарату. Тривалий час дослідники НАСА замовчували відомості про Нібіру. Усю інформацію про неї суворо оберігають і не піддають розголосу. Повторення всесвітнього потопу. Це станеться, якщо Нібіру пройде над одним із полюсів. Крига розтане, і спасіння тонучих – справа рук самих потопельників. Інформацію про Нібіру і досі замовчують. Жодної програми, жодного документального фільму. НАСА не публікує результатів своїх досліджень. Та зараз мовчати вже немає сенсу. І відомості про червону планету спливають на поверхню. А в травні 2012-го її побачать усі неозброєним оком. У вересні того ж року Нібіра буде схожа на друге Сонце. Тільки...
пройдет по орбите в опасной близости от нашей планеты. Сила его притяжения будет настолько мощной, что Земля может поменять наклон. Если это случится, то изменившаяся ось вызовет смену магнитных полюсов. И тогда на планету обрушатся невиданные силы наводнения и извержения вулкана, сметающие все на своем пути смерчи и землетрясения. Это Захария Ситчин, знаменитый американский ученый. В 1978 году Ситчин делает сенсационное заявление. В Солнечной системе вовсе не 9 планет, как считает официальная наука, а 10. По утверждению ученого, кроме всем известных планет, существует еще одна – Нибиру. Она блуждает в космосе по невероятно вытянутой орбите и проходит через Солнечную систему раз в 3600 лет. К теории Захария Ситчина в научном сообществе отнеслись с недоверием. Астрономы не могли поверить в то, чего не видно в космическом пространстве даже в самые мощные телескопы. Однако уже в начале 80-х, после длительных математических вычислений и построения компьютерных моделей, существование планеты Нибиру было доказано.
В 1982 году НАСА допустило существование большой планеты, которой впоследствии было дано название Нибиру.
В 2005 году американские астрофизики заявили, что на расстоянии приблизительно в 1 световой год от Земли располагается огромное космическое тело. Но главное, на огромной скорости оно приближается к нашей планете. Небесное тело настолько темное, что ни оптические телескопы, ни другие приборы не в состоянии его увидеть. Зафиксировать загадочный космический объект ученые смогли лишь 2 года назад, когда на земную орбиту вышел новый сверхмощный инфракрасный телескоп. То, что увидели астрономы на расшифрованных снимках, сделанных с телескопа, надолго повергло их в шок. В черной пустоте космического пространства четко угадывались очертания огромной планеты. Сомнений уже не оставалось. Это Нибиру.
Инфракрасный спутник, который действительно засек объект достаточно больших размеров, и ему удалось этот объект не только засечь, но и как-то зафиксировать, сфотографировать.
После изучения параметров и траектории движения гигантской планеты, ученые пришли к неутешительному выводу. Нибиру больше Земли в 5 раз. Но самое страшное, через 3 года она может пролететь в нескольких сотнях километров от Земли. Находясь так близко к нашей планете, она запросто сможет сорвать с нее атмосферу. Ученые выяснили, что однажды Нибиру уже погубила другую планету. Оказалось, что 16 миллионов лет назад в нашей Солнечной системе существовала планета Фаэтон. Она располагалась между Марсом и Юпитером. Теперь на ее месте пояс астероидов. Ученые считают этот пояс не что иное, как осколки древней планеты. По словам астрофизиков, скорее всего, Нибиру столкнулась с Фаэтоном, когда она в очередной раз проходила через Солнечную систему. После такого удара планета разлетелась на куски. По словам ученых, правительство просто скрывает от человечества правду, чтобы не вызывать панику.
Представители всех военных разведок мира эту информацию о том, что Нибиру может принести значительный ущерб, урон, разрушение и даже гибель жителей Земли, имеют. А не разглашается эта информация и не становится достоянием общественности только лишь потому, что НАСА и все эти структуры хотят спасти достойных представителей Земли, спасти всех, они...